Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to another episode of B is for Build. I'm Chris. In this episode, we're working on the Plan B BRZ. Since we did the last working episode here in the shop with the BRZ, I've put 5,000 miles on the car. It's been hit twice, unfortunately, and it needs some upgrades to the mods that we did. When we did the wide body, we need to make a couple little improvements to help with the water protection. I was daily driving this car quite a bit, and then after I got hit, I haven't been driving it because I didn't like driving around with the messed up front bumper. So I really want to get this car back to daily driving mode, and that's what we're going to do in this episode. Maintenance, repairs, mods, back on the road. Stay tuned. All right, so before we get started, I want to tell you guys a little bit about the history of what happened here. So this was caused, this paint chipping off very easily and stuff like that, was caused by us forgetting to do a good sanding and scuff up on the stock bumper paint before we painted over it. I was working very, very long hours back then, and I Scotch-Brighted and scuffed up the rest of the paint on the car, and I totally missed the front bumper because I think I painted it separate than the car, and that was a big mistake. So the paint was very fragile and it chipped off when I could find some like rock chips. Like these don't have anything to do with the accident. These were rock chips from cars when I was on the freeway, and that was gonna happen. So this needed to be repaired anyways. Then what happened is it got hit over here, kind of semi-bad, not too badly, and we lost some paint that I covered up with a paintbrush later on. And then last week it got hit really hard by some jackass that didn't leave a note. It gouged into the polyurethane. It was a really hard hit. It busted out my front grille, and then when I was on the freeway on the way to the shop, I forgot to like grab the front grille out of there. It was kind of half hanging on, and unfortunately it fell under the car and I drove over it on the way to the shop. So that was a big bummer. It's like a 50-buck piece. I'll steal the one off the Plan A temporarily so we can, you know, drive out of here looking good, and then I'll get another one and put it on the Plan A. So we need to do quite a few different little repairs and things, and respray the bumper. So the first thing that I'm going to do with this car is we're going to pull the bumper off so we can work on it. All right, I'm in the process of stripping everything off of this bumper, so we just removed that lower lip right there, and I took the lights out, and then I'm going to take that bezel out real quick here. What I wanted to point out was something that we did wrong with the body kit installation that we're going to fix this time. So on the other side here, let me show you from this side, you have this piece of the wide body kit right here, and it rivets into the bumper. Anytime you're riveting plastic into the bumper, or you're riveting into plastic, don't do what I did right here where it's just a rivet that goes into the plastic and uses the force of the plastic. What you're supposed to do is, because what can happen is right here where the rivet just popped itself out, it did it right here as well, and when I was driving I got about halfway to California and this thing was just hanging by one rivet and it almost fell off my car. So what you want to do is get a washer, get longer length rivets, and then get a washer, put it on this side so you have a nice metal thing to rivet into that'll sandwich between the plastic and the outside of that. So we're going to take these off. I'm going to drill all of these out on both sides because we're going to have to paint them inside and out anyways, and then when we put them back on we're going to get longer reach rivets and rivet into a washer. That way we have a better grip on the bumper. Okay, continuing, I'm just going to pull these off and then pull those off. All right, everything's off. I have one quite haggard bumper here to work with, so I'm gonna go ahead and sand it all the way down, strip off all the gray paint, and then get into the orange paint and sand that down a little bit too. I'm gonna try not to go all the way through the orange paint though. I've had bad problems with when you go all the way through the orange paint and you get down to the primer underneath with it reacting funny when I paint my new primer over it. So I'm just gonna be trying to scuff that up real good. I'm starting with 200 grit, and then I'm going to work my way up to 600 before I spray the primer sealer on it. Alright, it's a new day. Sanding went well. The only problem that we had is that it clearly burned through the stock paint in a lot of places. Everywhere that you see this gray, that's down to the plastic. The last time that I sanded through the paint on this down to the plastic and I sprayed my type of sealer primer out of the gun on this, I had a terrible reaction, and it happened to me twice. So I'm gonna try and use a different type of primer. Comes out of a can. I've had really good luck with it not causing reactions. So I'm getting a little like experimental now because I really don't want to spray out of the gun and have that reaction. I have 2 heaters over here going on the part to keep it kind of up to temperature. Paint needs to normally be at least 60 degrees to get that evaporation and get that drying. So that's the game plan. We're going to use some can primer to prime this thing. Before I do that though, I need to clean it up and degrease and wax remover it, and then we'll spray that primer. Alright, I forgot that there's a pretty deep scratch right here where the car hit the bumper when it kind of like came up on the bumper. So I got some of the lightweight body filler, and I'm going to go ahead and fill out those scratches with the lightweight body filler before I move on to primer. All right, Bondo work is done. Bumper is ready to be primed. So I had this really bad good idea, which was to take a tent and set it up and then put the bumper inside the tent, cover the tent with plastic, and then put the heaters inside the tent. And that would make everything warm and then hopefully not get overspray all over the shop like I've done once before. But the bumper doesn't fit in the tent. And I'm not gonna go buy a really expensive tent to paint inside it. So we're painting right here. I have painted in this shop in this temperature before. It'll work. Here we go. Our bumper is primed and has had plenty of time to dry up. Those heat lamps are actually working pretty well. So coming over here to kind of the paint booth mixing up station. I don't know if you guys remember, but way back we decided it's 6 parts black, 1 part metallic, and it's a 2-to-1 with the reducer. So I have this ultra fast reducer stuff that I'm using. So the way that works is we have 7 ounces of reducer in the cup, so we need to mix up 14 ounces of paint. So it'll be 12 ounces of this, which is 2 times 6. 6 parts black, so 12 ounces of that. I'll mix it up in these little cups, and then 2 ounces of the metallic. Mix all that up and we should have a color match on what we previously painted before. So I'm gonna mix that up and get spraying on the bumper. Alright, the painting portion of this is done. It looks a little uneven because it's still wet right now. Once it dries up, it'll all even out. The temperature was not an issue. It was just, apparently these heaters in here are making it the correct temperature. Everything was kind of tacking up and getting to the right stage at the right times that it said on the tech sheet. So we're good. I put like between 3 and 4 coats on here just because I had the paint all mixed up. So I'm gonna let this thing sit overnight, and tomorrow we'll get it on the car. All right, back to the last day of this little BRZ project. We have a lot more stuff to get covered today, so it's gonna be a big day. Right now, I'm gonna go ahead and clean up and then bolt back on our front lip that goes on here. All right, we got our front lip on. The next thing we're gonna do is put our Rocket Bunny pieces back onto the bumper. So like I mentioned last time, we had the rivets, they were going from plastic and then sinking and setting into our bumper, which is like a polyurethane plastic blend. And that's not a very good thing to sink into, and it can kind of like pop back out because it's just plastic's not strong enough. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna throw a rivet through the front of these like we did before. And then on the back over here, we're gonna take like a washer that is really close to the exact same size of our rivet and use that as our backing. Now our rivet is gonna basically rivet into that piece of metal and sandwich those two things together, and you'll get a really nice strong bond on those two things. So we're gonna do that on both of these things, and then we're going to paint our rivets black to match the rest of the car. Bumper is done, looks great. We got our fog lights back in there and our rivets painted. And so we're gonna go ahead and bring the car back in and then reattach the front bumper, and then we can move on to the brakes and rotors. All right, we have a little bit of clean versus dirty look in there, but it is definitely a good color match. You cannot tell the difference in color, which is what I was really worried about, and I'm really happy with the way that it turned out. So once the wheels and tires are off, I'll button up the side panels over there. They're not bolted to the fender yet. So we're gonna go ahead and pull the car in now and get the wheels and tires off. Wheels need a good cleaning, and then we're gonna do brakes and rotors while we have it here. All right, brakes and rotors time. When I got this car, my brakes were squeaking pretty bad. I didn't know if there was performance brake pads on there. Some performance brake pads actually squeak like all year round. And I didn't know if the previous owner put some of those on there or if it was just out of brakes. Only has 22,000 miles, so I didn't think it was very likely that the brakes would already be bad. But they do need to be changed. So I got a whole new set of brake pads and rotors, and I'm gonna go a little bit into detail on how to do these for all you guys at home. If you're watching this show, you're interested in cars, this is a really good place to start. So here's how you do it. First thing, jack up your car, get jack stands underneath it to keep yourself safe. Next thing you're gonna do is take your caliper apart. So you have what, like, I'm not exactly sure on all the terminology, but this is kind of the caliper bracket right here. It goes around your rotor, that's part right here. So this part holds your brake pads, and it has a piston that contracts when you hit the brakes. So there's a brake line attached to it. So you're gonna wanna take this thing off first. On my car, on this car, it's a 14mm bolt on the back end right here. It's almost always gonna be a bolt on the back end over here, and on a lot of cars, it's an Allen wrench bolt. So go ahead and take that off, and then you'll take this off, and then you wanna either set it on top of something, or you'll wanna hang it with like a coat hanger bent in an S shape, or something on the inside of your car so you're not letting this massive heavy thing dangle by the brake line. That's really bad. You could damage your brake line. All right, so you can see my brake pads are sitting right in here inside this bracket. You kind of just peel them right off. Now this brake pad actually has plenty of life left in it, and the rotor has life left in it. So the grinding I was hearing, the bad sounds were probably from the back. But while I'm under here and I have all the parts, I'm just gonna swap everything out new, so I have a fresh new set of everything. So the next thing that you're gonna do to get your rotor off is you need to take this bracket off. So there's gonna be a couple more bolts that you're gonna find, so you can remove this bracket. That will free up your rotor here. Okay, this bracket, remember which way is up and which way is down. They might not be universal. The bolts for this on the FRS BRZ application were 17 mil. So once you have that, just kind of wobble your rotor back and forth, and it'll kind of wobble itself off. And there you go, you have your rotor off. So my replacement rotors are vented and black, and that's about all I know about them. So you can normally see the little dots where the other one had the holes left over. Maybe this goes like that. And I have no idea what those little holes inside the rotor really are there for, because they're not utilized. But that's about it. So my rotor is aligned and put on just like the other one was. So there we go. So now, reverse of that, we're gonna go ahead and put the bracket back on, and then I'll check back in with you guys and show you about the new brake pads. All right, with the bracket back on and secured, you got your rotor on, next step is brake pads. So I went and grabbed my new brake pads. Just pay attention to the way that the old ones came off. You're just doing the same ones in reverse. With brake pads, I find it easier to come in at an angle. So set the bottom of it right and come in. I like to do like the back part facing first, and then it should kind of snap right in there. And of course, mine doesn't want to. There you go. And so these ones have these like little metal brackets that are like, these tiny like kind of chintzy metal. That's like shimming it out a little bit so it doesn't vibrate and doesn't squeak. That's what they try and do. It's not always necessary. Normally the metal backing on the brake pad will help you with that. So then the last part you need to do is grab your caliper back. So you can see I used a little bit of a clothes hanger to get that on there. You need to get your caliper, and you need to get it to clear your brake pads. Now inside here is a piston. And that is controlled by like your brakes, your whole brake system. And sometimes what's going to happen is if you have really worn out brake pads, this piston is going to be really, really far out, and you can grab a handle of a hammer and kind of leverage it against the back side of this piston, or the back side of the bracket, and force that piston in. Or sometimes you can just grab the handle and push on that piston. You're basically pushing that, like doing the reverse of the hydraulic of pressing the brake. You're going to push that back, that'll go back enough, and then you can get enough room to clear your new brake pads. That's normally going to happen on more worn out applications. And sometimes you can just grab it, pull it towards your way really, really hard, and that'll do the same thing. So one way or another, struggle with it a little bit, but get that back on over your new brake pads. All right, once you get your brake pads in there, you put your caliper back on. It's just those other 2 bolts. So it's only 4 bolts total that hold on the whole caliper bracket, and your rotor together. Now these are slotted rotors. The direction of the slots don't matter, but it's also vented, and if it has directional vents, then you need to worry about which way it's going. But these are straight vents in here too, so it's basically, these rotors can go either way. You can have the slots in them go in the opposite direction or this direction. I'm really good at putting everything on backwards on these cards, so I'm just gonna stick with it this way. I don't really care. It doesn't matter, but I did see in a video that if you get clicking for some reason, it can be because the slots and the rotors are pushing the brake pads around in a kind of a bad way. And to try and solve that clicking, you can take your rotor off and flip it on the other side so you have a different direction in the slots of your rotors. I heard Brembo, the really big, good Brembo kits, they tell you to do it this way. Lots of other ones tell you to do the slots the other way. But what I've overwhelmingly heard is that it doesn't matter. So this took about 15-20 minutes to do the first one. It'll get faster on the way around. In that time, Chelsea was able to clean up the wheel nice and shiny. So we're gonna throw our wheel on and move to the other side and do all the other sides. All right, we're done. You guys remember a second ago when I said it'd just be like about 45 more minutes? That was like 2 hours and 45 minutes ago. Turns out these wheels are the hardest thing in the world to clean, and when you cross thread a bolt on the back end, it can really cause yourself some problems. So the BRZ outside is missing 1 lug nut, and that lug is about 1/8 of an inch shorter than it used to be. But problems are solved. We have new rotors, new brake pads. Oh, the other fun thing is, these brake pads that I did pull off that had enough meat on them left, I was able to read on the back of one of them, it said Hawk Performance. These were performance brake pads. They didn't run out. The rotors are not dead either. They were squeaking and had a little bit of a grinding sound because they are high performance brake pads, and sometimes they do act like that. But you do get improved stopping power. For this car though, it's not a track car, so it doesn't really matter. I would like to have the non-squeaking version of brake pads. So that's what we got now, and so we improved our rotors and unimproved our brake pads, but we silenced them a little bit. So I'm calling it a win. Front bumper looks great, new brakes and rotors. Car's pretty, back to daily driving this thing, even though I got too many cars to call them all daily, so it's like a bi-weekly driver. Anyways, I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this. In the next episode, we're back on in the Mustang, and look forward to some of that. If you want to find us in more places, head over to facebook.com/BS4Build, and we are BS4Build on Instagram. If you like this show and you like what we do and you want to help support, head over to BS4Build.com, scroll down to the shop, pick yourself up a hat or a key tag or a shop banner, any of those things. All the proceeds go towards helping us with our builds. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. Peace!